Against, thank you. That's carried. Now we've got one more in public. Yep. So it's implementation of the Greater Christchurch Partnership Joint Housing Act Plan Action 7, extending Otatahi Housing Trust area of operations. Bruce.
And through the Mayor, I do have Kate Kearney from OCHT here, if she's okay to join us.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you want to just mention, Bruce, also that this has come out of PX and it's now in the open?
Yes. Yep. So we've looked to remove and redact required bits that were made at PX, so that's now open. So the purpose of this report is focused on a policy position that you made earlier in the year that was exploring whether or not OCHT could work outside of council, outside of Christchurch and Banks Peninsula. We're making the recommendation that you approve that for the reasons in the report. Take that the report is read, and we're both open for questions.
Right-ho. Tim, then Yanni.
Yes, and thank you again for bringing this into the public. I was the councillor who asked for it to come into public. And the reason I did that is it's ratepayers have set this up, and it's being, without question, it's the best operation in this area, without question. So I'm not questioning that, but what I am concerned about is taking focus of Christchurch. So if we go outside of Christchurch to our neighbours, we talk about the Greater Christchurch area, but it seems that, you know, when we're doing things, they're not our partners, but when we're offering things, they are. So how do you propose to keep the focus for the ratepayers of Christchurch rather than our neighbours?
Well, I'll let Kate answer first from an OCHT perspective, and then I'll come in with how we manage that lease.
So if you look around the South Island, only Christchurch has a portfolio that is of any sizable amount. It's 2,500 homes that we have here, 2,800 tenants. We're never taking our eyes off Christchurch. The reason we've been asked to consider working outside of Christchurch is the model you have set up has been so successful that other councils would like us to help them steer through how they get a bit more housing. Having said that, whenever we think about going somewhere else, we're always going with the thought of protecting and growing Christchurch. So we want to make sure that everything we do in sharing our IP, it's not a gift, and we will be charging for our services to ensure that we do the best job possible for other areas, but also for Christchurch, because we always want to come back to Otatahi and grow the services we deliver here.
And so on top of what Kate's talked about, which is the direction that the management and governance of OCHT do, we manage this lease very closely. So Lisa, who's in the back there, is regularly working through with OCHT on issues. So with monthly meetings and ensuring that everything is done appropriately. And then I come in on a quarterly basis. Kate and I meet and we review and have high-level KPIs and real focus on ensuring that all of our requirements are met. So that's not going to change. We will still be focused on that, laser focused on that, and laser focused on the financial matters to make sure that the lending that we've done with to OCHT to help deliver increased amount of social and affordable housing around Christchurch, that's protected, that we're really focused on protecting the ratepayers' interest there.
So there is a profit margin with obviously doing this outside of Christchurch. So would that be coming back to kind of cut the fees, the running costs of the Christchurch part of the business?
What I can say, Councillor, what we're always doing in working with Council is trying to work out how to be more cost effective and getting more money towards the portfolio, especially in maintaining the properties.
Okay. Yanni?
I was happy to move this. And just wondering if you could just clarify the difference between a private bill and a local members bill.
Right. So a members bill is one where the member of parliament puts that forward. What they do is put it into essentially a hat and they're drawn out. There are two other mechanisms. One is a local bill where a council puts forward a bill, for something specific to their area. And the other mechanism is a private bill where a private individual organisation can put forward a bill relating to their interests. And in this case, we're recommending that private bill as the appropriate mechanism here. It's got more certainty of getting onto the government agenda or onto the Parliament's agenda than a member's bill, and it's of interest to the OCHT as a whole rather than specific councils.
Okay, good. Tyler, please. Oh, good. Kel.
Thanks, guys. To what degree, if any, is this a response to pipeline issues, available land, and the ability to build in Christchurch?
Not. It's really not. This has arisen out of earlier discussions than the current discussions around the government's funding for new social housing. So we'd started on this journey before that came through. In terms of opportunities for land transfer in Christchurch, we certainly have got land within the housing portfolio that we are actively considering transferring to OCHT for development purposes. What's more important, and it's been the mantra that I've tried to deliver to you over the last 8 years constantly, we need the funding, and it's the government funding sources that's our primary concern there.
Okay. Tim?
If we can just scroll down a wee bit to number 4, were there concerns? Why is it in there with service delivery or ability to meet loan commitments? Is that a concern at the moment, or is that you just mentioned about funding? And
it was deliberately as to provide a clear assurance to councillors, particularly in responses to concerns that councillors have made. So we want to be front and centre that these are the concerns that councillors have raised with us, and we would convey those across. So that was the primary reason. We listened to you.
Yeah. If I can add to that, councillor, we have really very strict covenants that are monitored internally every month. But when I speak about meetings regularly with council, all of those concerns are looked at. We forecast forward. We actually forecast forward to the end of the lease period, which is 2046 or 2061, and we look to see if we ever got any risks in not being financially viable. And if I can come back to your comment about a profit margin, the only reason we ever have a profit margin is so that we can create surpluses to do more for people who are most in need of housing. And that's our mission, that's our purpose.
but I would argue that our neighbours haven't invested in social housing, and for want of a better term, with their rates, etc., they've done other things with them. So I don't have a problem with us having a profit margin for your expertise and
Yes.
charging as any other contractor, whether it would be legal or one of the big four, would be doing as well. As soon as you pick the phone up for them, they are charging. So I believe your expertise and your team's expertise is probably advanced than theirs in this area. So why would we have a problem with that?
Yeah.
When they haven't actually done anything.
That's the current restriction that we're trying to overcome, that OCHT can't charge for those services. If somebody from Hamilton or Wellington or Dunedin rings them, they can't charge for those services. They have to give it away for free.
Okay. So, any more questions? Nope. Right. Any debate at all? Tim?
I'll go first. I started all this. First of all, I want to thank Bruce for bringing this into the public, and I'm surprised I was the only one that asked this to come into public because of its funding mechanism from the ratepayers. And I want to say thank you to OCHT for what you do. There's absolutely no question you are the best in the business at what you do, but I do have trouble when we talk about the Greater Christchurch Partnership, and that word partnership. You know, an example is in the southeast of Christchurch, we've got the largest football club, and actually club in the South Island, 1,750 members with a waiting list of 100. 1,500 of those members, when it rains, are juniors, and suddenly there's no Centennial Park is closed because of the conditions and the weather, etc. But you can't go to Barrington because it's got the same. Hillsborough Park's the same. Let's go to Summerfield Park. Well, there's 3 fields there. The senior will work, the other 2 are flooded. But you can't invite other clubs because the facilities are so bad, they won't come. Well, if you go to Selwyn, the second largest club in the South Island, which funnily enough is also a football club, you go there, but they have artificial turf. And they invited our clubs, etc., down there to show them what they'd done. So our communities are struggling, where these other communities, our neighbours, have chosen to put money into other things. So I have no problem trying to charge them for expertise that our family has. It's really frustrating to try and balance this with your ratepayers. And when we look at One New Zealand Stadium at Te Kaha, where are our neighbours, our partners then? I think they're fair weather partners. If we're looking at Parakuri, a fantastic facility, but we are the ones that will be paying for the staffing and the running of it. Where are our fair weather friends then? So I really want to emphasise that we need to charge and we need to keep focus on Christchurch. This is and has been set up by ratepayers' money, and I think that we have to owe it to them to focus on Christchurch. And I thank you very much for your comments on that. Cheers.
Samuel?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Really good paper, and thanks for that. And probably just picking up on Tim's point around the PX paper. We hadn't had the council informal at that point, so people would have flagged it just in the normal process. So just we don't want the implication that we were trying to do anything in private, because we didn't have the chance to raise it until then. Look, I'm more than comfortable with this. It makes sense. It aligns with what the government are sort of talking about in terms of how you have more housing, how we leverage the expertise of Christchurch. And if you think about it, actually, we've kind of been talking about that with Three Waters, which is, we've got all this in-house knowledge. How do we leverage it into smaller councils or smaller communities as well? So, the cost of $5,000 to potentially do this work, and the government bill, I should say, would have a good chance of success, I would have thought, given the funding mechanisms they've set up. So, if we can provide more housing, in a sense, at no cost to the ratepayer, actually that's a really good thing, I would have thought, for communities. It doesn't mean we have to hold them long term, but actually getting some more into the market is a good thing. And at risk of quoting Mayor Phil, he does remind me constantly that OCHT can build houses at what we would say is half the price of Kāinga Ora. And so actually, if we're doing that, then maybe there is a wider economic benefit to the South Island as well. So I wouldn't have thought that this should be a problem, given it's asking around our support. And I guess it's a technical thing, but we have to remember it's not our trust. So, we do have an underlying agreement with the trust, but fundamentally this is an independent organisation that delivers. So, we've just got to be really clear that this is not our trust. We have involvement. We have an underwrite around some of the properties and things like that in the leases, but actually this isn't, we're not in control of this. They've come up with a really good idea which works, and we should support it.
Okay, Tyler?
Yeah, it's a great paper. Thank you so much for bringing it to the table. I just wanted to reiterate, weirdly, Sam's sentiment. I think he's actually spot on with all of that. You took me on a tour, actually, around the OCHT facilities, and I actually live around 3 of them, and they're phenomenally maintained. I even called the call centre once when there was a bit of an issue, and they were phenomenal. You're running an absolutely amazing organisation, and the last thing I'd want to do is to try and kneecap progression. You're doing some amazing things for the city of Christchurch, and I'm excited to see how you go with the greater Christchurch region and further possibly. And I just wanted to just reiterate that I'm definitely going to support this and say thank you for everything. Thanks.
Sarah?
Kia ora. Thanks so much for your mahi on this. It's really appreciated. I think that one of the things we've heard from our neighbouring councils and further afield, but especially our neighbouring councils, is that at the moment there are very, very few places for people to go where they get to stay in their communities. And what that means is that they have to leave the communities and come here to Ōtautahi Christchurch if they're in need of community housing. And so by us helping enable community housing in other districts, it helps with people's welfare staying in their communities, and it helps ease the pressure right here in Christchurch. Thanks.
Okay, me last. Yeah, sorry.
It might be good at some stage to have a workshop with OCHT just to see how this is going to work, just to so we all get a better understanding. I prefer that. If you guys aren't, that's fine, but I would like to see it.
Well, anyone that wants to go around, I'm sure Kate and will change. Yep, that's no problem. Yanni, please.
Thank you. As someone who raised this about 2.5 years ago when I was on the trust, a local bill or a private bill to me is a very sensible way forward. So I'm strongly supportive of this. What's really clear is that as a city, we have in the Greater Christchurch region carried the share of social and affordable housing, and we've allowed our neighbours to expand and rezone a whole bunch of greenfields without the requirement to have any inclusionary zoning or affordable or social housing. In fact, there's been research that has shown that Waimak and Selwyn have the highest number of covenants preventing social housing from being built in their areas, right? So I think this is a really positive step forward. This is consistent with the work that we've been doing through the Greater Christchurch Partnership around the Joint Housing Action Plan. In fact, that's going to be updated to the GCP on Friday, and it is really clear. It says, just to quote some of the stuff in the report, International Economic Research, as an example in Australia, has estimated that the societal benefits associated with providing more emergency housing for homeless can be 3 times the investment, and the societal benefits associated with the provision of public and social housing can be double the investment. It also goes on to talk about the fact that attempts to influence the market outcomes in the continuum for housing in terms of market, sale price or rents are likely to most impact households on medium or high incomes who for the most part have less of an affordability issue than those on lower income households. So it states, while GCP councils have recently adopted enabling planning frameworks which could encourage more market-based housing, this is unlikely to assist in the supply of affordable housing for the neediest low-income households. We cannot just upzone the entire city and region and expect that the issue of housing affordability gets addressed without doing the thing that we're going to do, like a direct intervention in terms of enabling the trust to be able to go outside of our city's area and to participate in the Greater Christchurch region. So I'm strongly supportive of this. This has to be part of how we address housing affordability in our city. And we do need what is a really successful trust that has been, and someone talked about the cost of capital in terms of building houses being half the price of Kangaroo. Ask them how much they've saved in terms of the council maintenance by taking on the maintenance from one of our council companies. They've saved lots of money in that space as well. So I have no doubt this will be beneficial to the city and to the Greater Christchurch region, and I'm strongly supportive of it.
Andre. Right, I'll just wrap it up. People who you were only a teenager, Andre, is that right? Far better for me to say. Way back in the day, when the city council had its 2,500 odd houses, to be fair to say, I'm not poking borax to anyone, we weren't doing the best job out. And OCHT was born because the government wanted to give some money to assist getting social housing happening. And they said, we're not giving it to you guys, you have to have an intermediary in between. How long, Kate, you been up and running? 8 years. So they've certainly taken the ball and run with it, and they are the envy of a lot of towns and cities, and certainly the government is very well aware of how well OCHT works. It's a great model, and if we can get it out to help others. And the other thing, now that since OCHT's been owns some of the social houses and manages our ones, we get a thing called a return. So it's good news in every direction. So we have a mover and a seconder already. So I'll put it, all those in favour? Against? Thank you, that's carried. Brilliant. Okay, fair enough. Oh, that's right. Jake and Pauline are on the trust, so they stood set back. Okay, so that's brilliant. So we'll now go into PX. Is that right, Mary? Yep, you're happy to move it. I'm happy to second. All those in favour to go in PX, say aye. Against? Thank you, that's carried.